Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Giant. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Kern. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. We got some postseason baseball to talk about today, not a whole lot. In fact, we have the bare minimum amount of postseason baseball to talk about today, but the wild card round has come and gone. You absolutely nailed your all sweeps prediction. Just don't read into what teams you picked, but you nailed the all sweeps prediction.
Yeah, I was saying it. I was saying it like this is, who, no matter who wins, it's going to be all sweeps. Book it, take it to the house. I didn't even specify teams when I made my predictions. I was just like, there's going to be 2 baseball games in this series, and then we're going to move on. And I made the exact right choices.
Except you did mention that the Phillies were going to win in 2.
I did as a side note. I was so confident in that I did mention that. But yeah, the other 3, it's irrelevant what my thoughts were on who was going to win the series.
It doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah, no, nothing matters. I've seen a lot of people talking about how maybe the wild card series just isn't it, because in 3 years of doing the best of 3 series, we have seen 13 series end in 2 in sweeps, and only 3 of them, including none this year, going to a decisive game 3. 2 of them were without fans. We've had one game 3 with fans before.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to really matter whether like the home team's winning or the away team's winning. It just seems like it's going to end in 2.
Yeah.
Because you figure that would be more a home team advantage of like, okay, if you get the first one, maybe it's just done. But even, like the Rangers and Diamondbacks, they went on the road, they won game 1, and then just took game 2 by multiple runs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, none of the games were particularly memorable. Like some games got good, like the Brewers had the tying run at the plate, last night in the 9th inning with 2 outs. But that was probably the most tense moment in any of these games.
Yeah, nothing crazy. You could argue the best moment was a grand slam in a 3-0 ball game where the team up 3 got the grand slam.
Yeah, if it would have made it a 4-3 game, that would have been fun.
Yeah, but yeah, it was that might have been the best moment. And yeah, I think there was just some overall just not paying off on opportunities throughout each of these series. For stats on all series, teams scored 2.9 runs per game. League average is 4.5. So scoring 2.9 runs per game, that's not great. And you could say, hey, these are aces going out there, but also these are playoff offenses. Normally this does not happen. Also, teams were 2 for 16 with a sacrifice fly with the bases loaded. Also at a 431 OPS with the bases loaded. It just seemed like they were leaving. Yeah, they were leaving them loaded, and even with the grand slam on 16 plate appearances, they had a 431 OPS with bases loaded. Also, only 11 home runs in these series. That's 0.7 per team per game. The 2023 season average in the regular season was 1.2. These teams were at 0.7 these past 2 games, and also batters hit 233 with runners in scoring position. Hitters were 256 in those situations in the regular season. So yeah, just not a lot of big moments, not a lot of clutch hitting. It was a pretty weird, 2 days of baseball there.
Yeah, no, it was a very odd couple of days. Unfortunately, nothing really memorable other than the Bryson Stott Grand Slam. It was just a cool moment. Like, what are we gonna remember from this series in 2 weeks? Other than like, haha, the Rays lost, the Blue Jays lost, they got swept. The Brewers got swept at home. Like, what are we gonna remember other than that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess like maybe the pickoff.
I'll remember the pickoff. I mean, you know what people are gonna remember is the Barrios move, which
Yeah,
we'll get into that later. But people will never let that one go, despite the fact that the Blue Jays got shut out in that game.
right, right, right.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm hoping I don't have to lean on this for what the good playoff baseball was. I'm hoping there are moments that are going to make me forget this wild card round, because if not, then we're looking forward to an unfortunate postseason.
Yeah. Um, I've looked back at it. I think the best wild card series game we've ever seen in these 3 years, is the Padres and Cardinals game 3 from 2020,
Yeah, I
which is
yeah,
unfortunate. That was like the best one.
yeah. Did the Padres come back in that one?
They did. There was also like the Yankees Guardians game 2, which was pretty good, but like I think the fact that it was a game 2 just like kind of takes it out. That was the game where like Stanton hit a grand slam off James Karinchak to take the lead. The Guardians blew a lead in the ninth inning. The Yankees came back. I'll never forget. It came down to Austin Hedges as the last hope for Cleveland and his like 212 slugging that year.
Yeah, Josh Naylor just decided to have a 5-hit game for
Yeah,
no
yep.
reason.
Yeah, Josh
Um,
Naylor just decided to be the greatest player in the league of that series.
yeah, but yeah, it was yeah, that one was pretty good. Even Padres Cardinals game 2 had some moments, because I think they were down like 4 in that one too. Um, so yeah, I mean, all those 2021s are kind of a blur, because there were literally like 18 of those games, I think, and they all
Yep.
happened in a 3 day span. Um, so yeah, yeah, this round has not built up a good reputation so far.
It has not. Yeah. A lot of people miss the wild card game, which I think is fair. A lot of people don't like that a division winner can just like get knocked out before the NLDS or the ALDS, um, which I also think is fair. Um, but
Yeah,
then again, like the Phillies made it to the World Series last year as the 6th seed. Like they wouldn't have made it otherwise. They were, I think, a much better option than the Cardinals last year. The Diamondbacks might end up being a better option than the Brewers. Um,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, also like how it's worked out, even just the past couple years, like that 3 seed is more like a wild card team than the other division winners. You
Yeah, because
like
there's been such a gap between division winners 1 and 2 and then 3.
Yeah, like it's been those AL Central and NL Central teams, and for some reason how it's been chopped out the past couple years is there's an imbalance. So like, you know, if you want to say you could also argue that yeah, the regular season, you know, who gets rewarded with playoff spots is kind of uneven, because I mean the Twins literally went into that playoff series with a worse record than the Twins as division winners. So, I think it kind of balances that out to where like, oh, you don't just automatically get immunity because you're a division winner. Like you may have to face a tough 6 seed. So I don't mind it as much. If it were a case where all the division winners were getting like 93 plus wins, I'd get it more. But obviously, uh, or at least in the past 2 years, I don't have the statistics on it, but I think they're two and they're I think those 3 seeds are 2-2 or something like that. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, there has just been a balance of power between the best team in the East and West and the Central for whatever reason. Because I think I think in that era, like since 2022, the Centrals have only been the 3 seed, right?
Yeah,
Right, because it was Philly and yeah, Cleveland and the Cardinals last year. And Cleveland won a very underwhelming series too.
um, yeah. I mean, it was 3 combined runs in the series,
Yeah,
or excuse me, 4. Yeah, four combined runs in the series. Yeah, so yeah, and I know the Twins were the 3 seed back in 2020, and the Cubs were the 3 seed back in 2020 as well. So
yep,
it goes back
yeah,
even
and both
further,
of them lost.
and both of them lost. So the
Yeah,
3 seeds are 2 and 4 in the history of these types of series, which is
all against the 6 seeds.
all against the 6 seeds. So,
Yeah,
like if those are the 2 and 1 seeds facing those teams, I don't think they're losing that much. So, there is
that's
something
close.
to be said about that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't know. I think we just need 1 year where we get like 3 game threes and like 2 of them are really good for people to buy in. It just hasn't happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Just winner take all games in general have just gone down in the past couple of years. I think there's only been like 2 since like the 2021 ALCS. I think it's been or since the 2021 NLDS between the Giants and Dodgers, there's been like 2. It's been Mets, Padres, and Yankees, Guardians, which also are not the best winner take all games.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, we need some more winner take all games, and I figured the wild card series would do that for us, but
It has not.
not this year, not this
Yeah,
year.
I mean, we used to start the playoffs with 2 automatic winner take all games, um, which was great. Like it was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I think a lot of fans miss that now that we haven't really had the success of the wild card series producing some good game threes.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I mean, it was such a great way to such a great way to start the playoffs, and yeah,
The
this is
Yeah, the Oakland Chicago game three was also like pretty good. That was the game where Liam Hendricks just like carried out of the bullpen, but like, not a lot of people remember it. Not a lot of people remember like the early 2020 playoffs at all.
yeah, not really. I
Like,
remember the first day of that, I was just like not available for 4 or 5 of the games.
hmm yeah, I mean, name a thing that happened in the Braves Marlins NLDS in Houston.
I know the Marlins were up like 4-0 in game 1 or something like that, and then it went downhill from there.
Yep. Every game felt like a copy and paste of the last. I think Travis Darno went off in that series or something.
Yeah, like it tough living, but
Yeah.
yeah, very funny. So yeah, I mean, yeah, anything more before we dive specifically into these series?
No, let's get into them. We got some baseball to recap.
Yeah, so we'll start off in chronological order and talk about the Rays and Rangers, which shocked me. Like out of all 4 of these series, I was most confident in Rays in 2. That was my most confident I was in a prediction in a good while. Like I was I was very, pinned on the fact that the Rangers had just come off a bad loss, bad series loss to, you know, extend their road trip to 8, potentially 9 games. I think Bruce Bochy mentioned in his press conference after winning this series that, their flight from Seattle to Tampa Bay went over Dallas. That's very, neurotic, I guess you could say, if or not neurotic. What's the whatever the word
Like
is?
upsetting.
Yeah, it's very melodramatic, I guess, but
Yeah.
it kind of sucked, and also the Rays just seemed better on paper, but the Rangers go out there, they win into convincingly both times. I mean, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean the Rays offense just really didn't show up. The Rays have scored 2 runs in their last 42 postseason innings, going back to the start of the 2022 postseason against Cleveland. Um, Yandy Diaz hit under 200 for the series. Randy Arozarena was good. Um, yeah, like no one really stepped up the way that like Corey Seager did, the way that Evan Carter did, the way that like Jonah Heim did. The Rays just didn't have a guy that like truly carried. Randy Arozarena looked like he was going to, and he kind of just didn't. Unfortunately, he did hit 375 with an 875 OPS, I believe, but you can't have that be your best hitter in a postseason series, and especially in a 2-game series.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. As a lineup, the Rays had a 34% chase rate, which was the highest among all the playoff teams in this series. I think the league average chase rate is around 28%. They were at 34. And yeah, like, this was an offense. They had a better OPS plus than the Rangers offense, which got a lot of praise for its offense, and performed pretty well in this series. But yeah, I mean, you have to give kudos to the Rangers pitching. Game 1, it's Jordan Montgomery with 7 innings, no runs and no walks, 5 strikeouts. He excelled off of soft contact. Jordan Montgomery had a 78.6 mile per hour average exit velocity against a 14% hard hit rate. And also, this was an interesting note I found. It was the most non-hard hit batted balls allowed by a pitcher in a playoff game in the StatCast era. And out of 45 playoff appearances with 20 plus batted balls against in the StatCast era, Montgomery's outing had the lowest hard hit rate. That's how good. That's how good Montgomery was at getting soft contact, and that's kind of the archetype of pitcher he is. So it makes sense. So I mean, you do have to give a lot of kudos to this Rangers pitching staff.
Yeah, the Rangers pitching staff also kind of kept the Rays to like a relatively low sweet spot percentage. I believe it was 28% in game 1. It was up a little bit in game 2, but it wasn't like crazy good sweet spots. It was like, like a ball that was 32 degrees, but like hit 90 miles an hour. So a
Yeah.
fly out, or a ball that was hit, 8 degrees, but, a ground out. So, the Rangers did a really excellent job all around of inducing bad contact against the Rays, not to mention the 34% chase rate, the fact that they struck out 11 times in game 2 and many more in game 1. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. They had very good command, as you have here, 1 walk in 18 innings. Um, that's really good. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, they just kind of suppressed everyone in that offense, to a degree.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Eovaldi really, really surprised me. Although it shouldn't have surprised me. Like it's playoff Nate, it's big game Nate. He, seems to excel in these types of situations. It was just I was really, I put him as my slightly alarming in our most recent episode because he was the worst pitcher in the month of September pretty much. But he goes out, he brushes that all off and throws 6 2/3 innings pitch, allows 1 run, walks nobody, which was a problem for him. He had walked 13% of the batters he faced in the month of September. He walks nobody and he strikes out 8, allows 0 extra base hits after having a very high barrel rate in the month of September, and then gets a 43% chase rate in that game, which is pretty unbelievable. So he must have just flipped the switch, brushed that all off. Shout out to him for doing that. And yeah, to go off the point of the batted ball data on the Rays, they had the lowest expected WOBA of the 8 playoff teams over the past couple of days. So, that was, they weren't getting unlucky. It was just the Rangers were just completely shutting them down.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it just looked. They looked like a completely different team entirely. Do we want to talk about the attendance stuff?
I mean, it was surprising to me.
It was surprising to me as well. I understand, there's the whole issue with the location of Tropicana Field relative to Tampa, the city of Tampa. I understand, it was 3 p.m. on a weekday, but the 2 lowest playoff attendance games since 1919. That's the lowest in the live ball era. Um, like the 1925 World Series, Game 7, and all that rain had more people there than these Rays games. Like that can't happen.
Yeah, no, it's really rough. I mean, you could partially blame like scheduling, and it was probably 2 days notice everyone was given that it was going to be 3 o'clock on weekdays, but they also scheduled that time for a reason because they less people watch Rays games. So
Mhm.
whether it's in person or on the television, yeah, it's that was yeah, that was pretty brutal to watch. I'm trying to see um what the attendance was back in 2021, the last time they hosted a
Yeah, I mean they were night games, so I'm sure it's a little bit better. And plus they
yeah.
were playing the Red Sox, so like naturally there were probably a lot of opposing fans there. Um, I even remember in like 2019, like when they played the Astros, when they were down 2-0 in the series and 2-1 in the series, like those games looked like they were pretty well attended. And it just looked a lot worse this year, which is weird because it's like, like we now know that the team is staying in their market. They're not going to Tampa, they're staying in St. Petersburg, but you don't have fans that have to worry about like, do I want to give this owner money because he might be taking the team somewhere else? Like we know the future of the Rays is staying where they are.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, game one of the 2021 ALDS was 27,000 in
Yeah, that's
attendance, and
8,000 more.
game two was 37,000. So I think part of it is a little bit of a timing issue too.
Still, I feel like it shouldn't really be an excuse.
Yeah,
Like I understand you're not gonna put 40,000 people in those stands, but like you couldn't even get half that.
right. Yeah,
Uh,
it's a very tough look. Um, and yeah, it does kind of cement the idea to me that they should have made their best effort to get into Tampa Bay for that new
yeah,
stadium, because
yeah,
yeah, if you can't get them to St. Petersburg for a playoff game, it's not the best.
yeah. Like I said, their new stadium is gonna only have 30,000 seats. Like, I mean, sure, it'll look sold out next time the Red Sox come in for a playoff series, but it's still gonna be an only 30,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. 2019 also both of those games were attended by 32,000 people. Um,
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure I remember those games being well attended.
yeah, like maybe not sold out to the fullest, but almost. Like this was pretty weird. I don't know what the explanation is. I'm sure some local people might know a little bit more, but yeah, that was not the best.
So Evan Carter, Corey Seager broke out for this series for the Rangers. That was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah, Evan Carter, like 3 for 4, 3 walks, 3 for 4, 3 walks, 2 doubles, home run, 2875 OPS. Also the second player in playoff history to get 3+ extra base hits and 3+ walks in his first two career playoff games. The other guy to do it was 2015 Jorge Soler. Didn't remember him being like that, but he was, I guess.
I
Um,
don't either. If you told me Jorge Soler's first time in the playoffs, I would have probably guessed it was 2021.
yeah, yeah.
That just makes sense. I don't know.
And Evan Carter, by the way, still has his rookie status for next year. That's how, you know, inexperienced he is, but he's still getting it done. And then yeah, Corey Seager, 4 for 8, 3 doubles. Um,
Yeah, Corey
yeah,
Seager, by the way. I want to talk about him real quick because he's quietly becoming like an iconic postseason performer. In 2020, obviously I believe he was the NLCS MVP and the World Series MVP, right? Am
yes.
I? Yeah. So I mean, during the entire 2020 postseason, he had an 1171 OPS. 2021 wasn't as great, but either way, since 2020, he has played in 32 postseason games. He's hitting 285 with a 987 OPS, 10 home runs, 28 RBI, 18 walks, 378 on base percentage. Like Corey Seager is a guy you want to have on your team in the playoffs, and I think he might be the best player in the playoffs entirely on any team.
Yeah, that
Like
is
Mookie Betts, Ronald Acuna, sure, but Corey Seager has the track record more than either of those two.
yeah, and like putting them just at the plate, I think I might just rather have Corey Seager than
Yeah.
either of those two.
Yeah.
Like,
Like if you wanted to pick who you want up in a big situation, I don't think you're wrong for picking Corey Seager over the other two.
yeah, like I'll take Acuna on the bases, I'll take Betts in the field, but Seager I want at the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary there. Also 0.956 win probability added since 2020, which is a large number. So yeah, I mean, Rangers dominate. It really instills a lot of confidence in them for me going forward. It kind of instills the fact that this is a team that almost beat the Astros out in the division, and we're very close to doing that. So there's something to be said about this team, and there's a reason why they scored the most runs in baseball, and why they had a good team ERA and everything like that. I hope that they can get through their pitching health problems still, because they only had to pitch 2 games. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. But I mean, there's no reason why they can't, take it to the World Series here.
No, there is no reason. I know that they're about to face the Baltimore Orioles, who are, on paper, right, by record, the best team that they're going to face in the American League portion of the playoffs. Some might argue the Astros are a more competitive team for them, but yeah, I mean, if they can win this series against the Orioles, which I think they can, and honestly, I think if they can beat the Rays the way that they did, they can beat anybody, right? I mean, if they went toe to toe with the Rays and like just barely squeaked out of there alive, maybe you could look at that and say, okay, the Orioles are a better team, they're going to beat them. But they completely dismantled the Rays from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Orioles, they are the best, had the best record in the American League, but they were only 2 games better than the Rays.
Yeah.
Like anything's possible there. I'm sure the Orioles home field advantage will be better than the Rays home field advantage, but other than that, I don't think it's that much of a jump. Anything more before we get into Twins Blue Jays?
Now let's get into it. The Twins, they are the Twins again.
Yes.
They won 2 postseason games, not even just one.
It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah. The Blue Jays have been maybe one of the most disappointing teams in the decade of the 2020s. I mean, all they've done really, like, I think the last time they performed to their expectations was 2020. They make it to the playoffs. They, lose that series against the Rays, but they weren't supposed to win a game in that series against the Rays. 2021, they had postseason hopes. They came up just short. 2022 and 2023, they both had divisional expectations, and they kind of squeaked into the wild card and then went out in 2 games. And this one was even less competitive than the last one, right? Because, at least they almost won a game in 2022. That was not the case in this series.
Yeah, at least they had a lead in 2022. I don't think they had a lead at all in this series.
No. They scored 1 run, and it was when they were already down 3-0.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm extremely disappointed in the Blue Jays. I can't imagine what it's like being a Blue Jays fan, considering all the investment, all the farm system buildup they've had over the course of the past several years, and just to, I mean, at least they've made it into these situations, but just to kind of flop in these situations has to be really frustrating. I mean, 0-4, 4 consecutive playoff losses, no playoff wins in this window, and that window is going to continue to close. They're stacked.
It's not getting any more open.
Exactly, like they're stacked with veterans who are probably going to continue to get older. They're I'm not sure what their farm system looks like, but it's not going to save them necessarily, I don't think, from them getting significantly older. But yeah, it sucks. Just to break down what kind of went wrong in the series, they had 4 opportunities with a runner on third, and they never got that run in. They were 0 for 3, and they had a pickoff. And yeah, I mean that kind of breaks it down for you. Like they were able to get some runners on base, but when they had those opportunities, they just really did not come through.
Matt Chapman had a situation in, I believe, the 6th inning where it was bases loaded, 1 out, and he hit into a double play. It is kind of satisfying that A-Rod had to call the series where Game 1 was won strictly on home runs by a team that got out hit, and Game 2 just had no offense,
Yes, indeed.
ruining his narratives.
Yep, yep.
Can we talk about Royce Lewis, because that man is real?
Yes,
He
he
hit 2 home runs on Tuesday. Uh, the only source of offense for the Twins. He had a 2-run home run in the 1st inning, and then a solo home run, I believe, in the 3rd. And the Twins won 3-1.
yeah, like he's very real. Like there's a reason. I guess there is a reason why he was ranked so highly in the in the farm system for so long, and how
Or
ranked so,
the fact that he was a #1 overall pick.
yeah, it's all coming together now.
Yeah, very very happy for Royce Lewis. It's been a long time coming for him,
Yeah, absolutely. Like the journey
and
from
he's still only 24.
yeah, exactly. Like it does seem like a while since he got drafted, but I mean he was drafted out of high school.
Hmm.
Um, so he's a 24-year-old guy. So even with the long journey, still a young guy. I mean, still younger than when Aaron Judge was a rookie, which is funny to think about. So yeah, I mean that's cool. Like he's going to be in that lineup continuing into the Houston series. I don't know what his status is for how he can play the field or how he can run the bases, because apparently that's a problem. Like I forget what specific injury he has, but
Yeah,
um, it's not affecting his trot around the bases. And if he keeps hitting home runs, he'll stay in that lineup.
exactly.
Um,
But the pitching staff, I knew that was going to be the Twins' biggest strength going into this series, and it more than impressed. Pablo Lopez looked really good. Sonny Gray, 5 shutout innings. Obviously, the bullpen looked amazing. Louis Varland coming out like sitting 100. I was not ready for that. Um, Obviously, Johan Duran looked fantastic. Uh, every single guy that it just felt like every single guy that came in was like another guy that you might not be super familiar with. Caleb Felbar was another one, but like another guy you might not be super familiar with, but they're gonna get the job done every time. Griffin Jacks, yeah, Louis Varland, Brock Stewart looked excellent yesterday in his relief outing. We didn't even get to see Chris Paddock in this one.
yeah, no, no, not at all. Um, and yeah, I mean, obviously the Twins staff as a whole only allowed 1 run, but the bullpen allowed 0 in their I believe 7 1/3 innings pitched. They were pretty excellent. They had looks like 10 strikeouts in those 7 1/3 innings with 1 walk. So just FIP wise, that looks also very amazing. And yeah, whenever they did have someone in scoring position or a runner on base, they came through and did not allow that run to score.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a really really well pitched series, against a good offense too, right? I mean they kind of silenced all of those bats. Like, who do you really remember being a solid bat in that series for the Blue Jays?
yeah, it's there. Like I think George Springer has some good batted balls. I mean,
Sure,
he opened the he opened game 2 with a 111-mile-per-hour line drive for a base hit,
he did do that. Yeah, I do remember that.
but I don't really know anything other than that.
Uh, George, well, he hit 222 throughout the series. Bo Bichette hit 500 with a 1,000 OPS. I think
Yeah,
he did hit a double.
he was
That
over
was pretty
there
good.
opposite
Yeah,
fielding.
Blue Jays didn't hit a single home run, by the way.
Yeah,
That wasn't fantastic.
yeah, and
And the Twins, yeah,
they hit 3 barrels, but they all went to the center fielder.
yep.
So they hit them to the wrong place.
So I do want to talk about this Vlad Guerrero Jr. pickoff, because that was I would imagine that was probably the biggest like turning point in the game in terms of win probability added, right? Or at least one of the biggest turning points because the Blue Jays had the tying run on Vlad was the tying run at second base in that game at that point. And there was a guy on second and third, 2 outs, and a 3-2 count to Bo Bichette, and Sonny Gray turned around and ended up picking off Vlad. And there's a lot of speculation on why the Blue Jays lost this game, and I think you don't need to point any further than that.
Right. Yeah. It's a large part of the reason. I think also what ended up being the highest impact win probability added
double play
was the double play.
Yeah, it's tied for third, but it was I mean it was higher than any of the scoring plays.
Yeah, and
It's tied with one of the scoring plays.
And yeah, and that's just a bad base running mistake. Like, we're big baseball fans. We never see a pickoff at second ever.
No. And not only that, but there's a lot you have to consider with how bad it was that he got picked off because, if you're trying to steal third and you get picked off getting too much of a lead, that happens. But Vlad wasn't stealing third, you know why? Because there was a guy on third. So you think the guy on third was stealing home? I'm gonna say probably not. And not only that, but one thing that you mentioned was like, maybe, he's just trying to get a bigger lead so that it, increases his chances of scoring on a base hit, which is fair, but if you want to do that, just get a good secondary because you know what? You don't even have to worry about getting picked off second on a snap throw by the catcher because it's 3-2. If the ball reaches the catcher's glove at all, that's the end of the at bat. Because it's either a walk or a strikeout, in which it doesn't matter. There's 2 outs. The other possibilities are foul ball, which you just go back, or like a ball in play, which you're running on contact. That's an inexcusable mistake. All Vlad had to do was not get too far off second there. That's all he had to do, or like be aware of Carlos Correa being behind him. And that, ultimately that was the end of Sonny Gray's outing, right? Bo Bichette did make an out in his when he came back up to hit, but it was against a different pitcher. And by the way, he had 2 hits in that game. Like he took the bat out of the hands of effectively their best bat in that series at the biggest point in the game to that point.
Yeah, and it's a 3-2 count. I feel like that's a little bit more favorable towards hitters. And Sonny Gray's, at the end of probably a long inning, there's probably a reason why he's going over to second because the task of getting that last pitch to get that last out, that's a hard task to do. And that pickoff, if he didn't get the out, it would have been, a little bit of a mental throw off from what he was doing on the mound and just a little bit of a refresher. Whereas, if he was successful, he was out of the inning. So yeah, I mean, it's all the responsibility there is on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Like, either way, it's your, you just can't get picked off there. And, you have to be aware of who's around you. And
the only thing he had
aggressive.
The only thing he had to worry about if he wanted to get a good lead was in case, Sonny Gray had thrown ball 4 to Bo Bichette and the catcher threw over to second on that ball because, like, technically he could do that. It wasn't a force play, but, all you have to do there is not, get too far off the bag. And it's not a difficult thing to do. Not really that difficult of a thing to do. There are a lot harder things to do in baseball than that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the Blue Jays lose, and that's a lot of the reason. And the Chapman double play seemed like a bit of a nail in the coffin. Like it came the literal pitch after a line drive that was, I think, like 2 feet foul. That would have driven in 2 runs if it was 2 feet to the right. Because it was it would have been ground rule double, but would have tied the game. But he was just a bit off, and then grounds into a double play immediately after, and the Twins bullpen pretty much shuts it down from there. And I guess we could we could talk a little bit about, this decision that everyone seems to get into.
I guess we can discuss. So, uh, in the fourth inning, the Blue Jays removed Jose Barrios from the game. Um, after facing the lineup one time and made way for Yusei Kikuchi, and I'll be the first to say I didn't agree with the decision. I would have left Barrios in. If you wanted to take him out after facing the order X amount of times, I would have done it twice. I would have let him face it twice, and it's a winner go home game. He looked really good in those 3 innings. Um, and I'm not saying I agree with taking him out. I definitely don't. But you know, the reality is like the Blue Jays would have lost regardless because they got shut out.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's not the decision that lost the game for the Blue Jays. It was, a variety of things on offense that prevented them from winning. And to just break down the logic of why maybe John Schneider did that, it wasn't a time through the lineup issue, I don't think, because Barrios had better numbers his second time through the lineup than Kikuchi had first time through the lineup. It's a 664 OPS against versus a 700 OPS against for Kikuchi first time through the lineup. I think it was a platoon thing. Was when Barrios came out, the 3 of the next 4 batters they was scheduled to face, which would have stayed the same if he were to stay in, were left-handed batters, and the numbers on left-handed batters were much different for Barrios than for Kikuchi. Barrios in the regular season had a 774 OPS against lefties, or lefties had a 774 OPS against him. Kikuchi, lefties had a 659 OPS against him. And as I mentioned, 3 of the next 4 batters scheduled were left-handed batters. And still, I think I would agree with you that, yeah, I don't think it was the correct decision. Barrios, was he had things going right. He struck out 5 of 12 batters, wasn't allowing hard contact, and just, I think in general, is a better pitcher than Yusei Kikuchi, even second time through the lineup. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't.
Not only that,
go ahead.
like Jose Barrios is like, a $130 million pitcher or something like that, right? What is his contract
127.
extension that he got?
127.
131 mil. Yeah, like you extended this guy. You want him on your team until 2028. And at age 29, in a big game against the team that you actually acquired him from, the team that, he's trying to show, hey, you traded me, this is what you traded. And you take him out after 3 innings. And it was in an elimination game where the offense wasn't doing anything. You need to have Barrios out there. I know that Kikuchi, has looked a lot better this year. And not only that, but it really didn't seem like anyone was aware of this plan. Like Barrios didn't, in his post-game quotes, sounded like he didn't know he was going to get taken out. Vlad Guerrero Jr. said like everyone was surprised that it happened. It seems like they just didn't communicate. It felt like the plan all along was to have taken Barrios out after that much time. And it just didn't, and it sounded like they never actually communicated that with any of the players, which is pretty brutal mismanagement by John Schneider.
Yeah, right. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Blue Jays let him go, but I don't think it would be over this decision. I think
No, it would be a long time coming. I'm
Yeah.
surprised it isn't announced by now, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, last year, I guess he could be praised for digging them out of a bit of a hole mid-season. But this year was, some underperformance on their part, both in the regular season and especially the postseason, not winning a game against an 87-win team. So, yeah, I mean, anything more before we move on to Brewers-Diamondbacks?
Sorry about the Brewers and the D-back.
Yeah.
Very cool. I will say very cool that the Twins won. But I mean, they looked like no joke in that series. Maybe that, it's hard to tell. Like, is it a Blue Jays bad? Is it a Twins good thing? The Twins looked really good. They looked sharp on all fronts. the offense, obviously, you could have asked for a little bit more, but uh, it seems like offense just hasn't been a theme anywhere in these playoffs outside of Philadelphia, and
Right.
maybe even Arizona, Milwaukee, because for some reason that was like the highest scoring series of this slate, which made no sense at all.
Exactly. And also, last thing I'll say is Minnesota's home crowd seems pretty real.
Oh for like a what 3 o'clock game, 3:30 game.
Yeah, 3:30 game on their time.
Hmm.
They didn't, you know, Rays their 3:30 game and the Rays 3 o'clock game looked much different.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, no, that
so
was a playoff crowd.
absolutely. So the Diamondbacks sweep the Brewers 2 games and do it by 3 runs in each game. Also, they faced a deficit early in both games and came back in both of them. Brewers offense seemed to jump early and then just kind of shut down after. Some of it was, poor clutch hitting. Some of it, there was a little bit of bad luck there, at least on the front of one specific play. But I think the biggest note for me was the Brewers had 6 opportunities with the bases loaded throughout the series. They went 0 for 5 with a sac fly and scored 1 run in those situations. The part where I'm saying bad luck is they did have bases loaded for that Evan Longoria diving double play. That was a line drive with a 93.8 mile per hour exit velocity and a 770 expected batting average. But it resulted in 2 outs for the Brewers, and I can't even fully blame the guy at second for getting doubled up. It looked like that was definitely going through, although I think the lingo is to say freeze on a line drive, but nonetheless it was an out and then another out. But what did you think about this series?
I mean, I'm very impressed by the Diamondbacks. They've all season where they looked like they were out and then they came back, right? I mean, we saw the skid that they went through in July. They had like one of the worst records in the league and they came back. As a team with not a lot of experience in the big leagues, they're led by a rookie in Corbin Carroll. They don't have a lot of playoff experience. But they looked like they'd been there before, kind of in all fronts, right? Um, and they came back a lot. They were down by 3 in each of the 2 games. I believe that's what it was, right? They were down by 2 in game 2, but they were down by 3 in game 1, and both times they came back to answer. Um, their bullpen has looked really solid, which was which was really tough for them during the regular season. Paul Sewald, have you seen the "It's time for Paul Sewald to pitch" meme?
I don't think so.
Okay, so it started. I'll give you the lore real quick. So this started when he was on the Mariners. I think it was in 2021 when he like became the closer of that team, and someone made like the guy cry, like the soy face crying guy versus the Chad meme, where it was like Kevin Cash saying like we need to take our pitcher out because like his spin rate was like 20 RPM less, and his xwOBA against the second lefty is 70 points higher. And then it was just Scott Service saying it's time for Paul Sewald to pitch, and it made its way over to Arizona, and now it's like kind of becoming a thing because he's closed out both games.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it is time for Paul Sewald to pitch, and it's also time for Kevin Ginkel to pitch, which he did in both games very nicely. Andrew Saalfrank came in with I believe in a bases loaded jam with 1 out in game 2, and he got a ground out to the pitcher and then another ground out. Right, that's what it was.
Second baseman, yeah.
Yeah, second base. And you had some interesting notes on his batted ball profile.
Yeah, I watched those 2 at bats and I was like, this guy, it seems like he's done this before, and
Mhm.
I'm sure that he was like this in the minors, but in the 10 innings that he had in the regular season at the MLB level, he had a 74% ground ball rate. He threw a sinker 63% of the time. Everything he throws moves down, and yeah, the fact that he had a 74% ground ball rate did really strike me, because I'm like, this is Daniel's gonna love this guy.
Yeah.
That was one of my first thoughts. I was like,
Yeah,
this,
I love me a ground ball pitcher.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, Andrew Saalfrank, very, by the way, he was the WPA leader among all players in this game. Which isn't surprising because I mean, bases loaded with one out. Um, and yeah, he got out of it. The Diamondbacks also just like, they scored runs when they needed to. You think about the ninth inning in game one, they scored 2 runs with 2 outs. I believe it was a Christian Walker double.
yep.
That scored 2 runs that made it 6-3 instead of 4-3. Um, yeah, they looked like a, I'm gonna sound like a boomer saying this, but they looked like a good old baseball team right there.
Yeah, yeah.
They had, it
The-
was a good mix of home runs plus like other kinds of RBIs, right? I mean, Corbin Carroll went deep, Alec Thomas went deep, Ketel Marte went deep twice, I believe.
no, just
That happened
once.
just once. Okay, yeah, you're right.
I think
Yeah, they had what, 3 home runs, 4 home runs.
four D-backs homered once.
Yeah, again, Gabriel Moreno, who, hopefully he's okay. He got hit on a backswing by Sal Frelick and came out with a concussion. That's a guy you want in your lineup if you're the Diamondbacks. Not even in your lineup, you want him behind the plate.
Yeah, exactly.
So
One
here's
thing,
the thing.
one thing about the Christian Walker double also is he, kept it in the park, didn't kill that rally. So that's a good old baseball team move right there.
Yeah, what was their BABIP with runners in scoring position? Because I feel like they did a lot better than any other team.
Well,
Maybe that's just a feel thing, and it's just wrong.
I know that yesterday, game two, they went 3 for 5.
They
And
had they had a they had a 364 BABIP with runners in scoring position, which is the second highest, the highest being the Miami Marlins.
yeah,
Who,
what
you
I'm
know,
curious to see what the
who
expected numbers are with runners in scoring position. I know that Walker, um, that Walker double,
double.
had some very high expected numbers on it because it was hit so hard, and it didn't look like, a lot of the time that type of batted ball is a home run as well, which would bump up the expected numbers. Yeah, gonna take an extra look, but yeah, I mean, like game two was a matter of them. It was a matter of them, coming through in the good situations because they didn't get a lot of runners on. They only left 3 men on base, but they were three for 5 with runners in scoring position. I mean, like scoring 5 runs and only leaving 3 on base is, that's plain old efficiency right there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Team expected batting average with runners in scoring position. Looking here.
I'm looking at the Marlins right now. Yeah, there's the 2 runs they scored. Yeah, the Marlins did score 2 runs, which is big for them. And then Jake Berger hit a single that advanced the guy from second to third. Oh wow, and oh yeah, and it was an infield single. Forgot about that one. Yeah. So the Diamondbacks hit 267 with runners in scoring position, which was the third highest among all playoff teams, tied with the Brewers, ironically, and the Marlins.
Yeah, and they had a 249 expected batting average with runners in scoring position, which was the second highest, um, rank of the 8 playoff teams in this little thing
Ironically, to
here.
the Brewers.
Yes, to the Brewers. So yeah, I mean, they weren't the best, but they were better than most of the teams this past 2 games.
They were getting it done.
Yes. And especially yesterday where, they came up on the very limited amount of opportunities that they had. I mean, that sixth inning was huge for them. The fact that they were able to come back against Freddie Peralta, who had been dealing all night, and, get somewhat of a rally. They had a walk, a Corbin Carroll doubled that just snuck through, got past the line, or got down the line past Santana, and yeah, eventually, a rally starts and they take the lead. Yeah, anything more on the Diamondbacks Brewers.
Yeah, I think this is a very disappointing series for the Brewers. They something has always just felt off with them, as a playoff team. I mean, I think pretty clearly they're not the Dodgers or the Braves. But this was probably the best opportunity that they've had since 2018 to really make some kind of run with a Diamondbacks team that was beatable, with a Dodgers team coming up that has a weaker pitching staff. This was the chance for them, and they had, home field advantage. They had two of their three aces on the mound. Unfortunately, Brandon Woodruff got hurt, but it wouldn't have really mattered anyway. But yeah, it's a very, very disappointing outcome for Milwaukee, and I'm very curious to see how they go from here. I think, David or Craig Counsell might be out because his contract expires this year. Corbin Burns might be out. They might trade him. Brandon Woodruff's contract expires next year. They might trade him. Who knows what direction they kind of try to go in here. And David Stearns is also gone. So this could be a big transition offseason for the Brewers. And we could be looking at this series with the Diamondbacks as the end of, a good run of winning in the regular season with as a small market team. But the rest of the division's catching up, right? I mean, the Cubs are up and coming. The Reds are up and coming. The Cardinals can get hot at any point. Unfortunately, the Pirates are still kind of waiting on. But, uh, you know, next year we're gonna be expecting a lot more parity in the NL Central, and it feels like the era of it just being the Brewers or Cardinals by default might be coming to an end.
Yeah, and just briefly going back to the missed opportunities of the Brewers is, they lose a game that Brandon Pfaadt starts, Brandon Pfaadt versus Corbin
Yep.
Burns, and they lose that game. And they seem to be right. They seem to be hitting off Zach Gallen well, didn't take advantage of that enough. Yeah, and 0 for 5 with the sac fly with bases loaded throughout the series. But yeah, going back to your point, yeah, I mean, this easily could be a transitional time. This isn't necessarily a big market team. They don't really spend a lot and go out and get the necessary additions, like big necessary additions that other teams do. And yeah, I mean, there has not been a repeat winner. There hasn't been a back-to-back NL Central champ since the 2016 to 17 Cubs. There generally is a lot of parity in the NL Central, even taking away some of the factors that you mentioned. Like, it just seems very random at certain points. You can't bank on the Cardinals being a
I think
70
more
team
more
again.
like more competitive parity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could
Like there are
definitely see.
the number of teams we have expectations for are going to be higher.
Yeah, like we cannot, discount the Cubs and Reds next year like we discounted them this year.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a missed opportunity for the Brewers, very much so. I mean, facing an 84 win team to open up the playoffs, and nothing taken advantage of, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how this Brewers offseason plays out, but it's not a lot of positivity going on in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I guess that'll lead into the final series, which probably there's the least to talk about, just because I think everything went according to plan, unlike most of the other series. Yeah, the Phillies sweep the Marlins, and that's one of the only things that made sense these past 2 days.
Yeah. The Marlins struggled to score runs. I believe they scored one run in each of the two games, and both of them were. Well, I mean, the second of the two runs was what made it 7-1 in the ninth inning, and it was a Josh Bell single that was hit under 80 miles an hour. Yeah, I mean, like I said, no one really performed offensively. Luis Arias only hit 125. That's, disappointing. Jorge Soler hit 125, only singles. Um, Really the only guy that hit well was Josh Bell, who hit 500 with a 1250 OPS. I believe he hit a double at one point. No home runs. And the Phillies just looked really solid on offense. Right? I mean, Trey Turner looked good. Bryce Harper, could have looked better, but he's coming. JT Realmuto hit a laser home run. Bryson Stott hit that grand slam. Um, Everyone, that offense was just firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and Braxton Garrett and Jesus Luzardo are no slouches. Those are those are guys that deserve to start playoff games and were pretty good throughout the year, but
Mhm.
the Phillies were able to, get them out early, not let them deal for too long. At most give them 1 to 2 shutout innings, and yeah, they just rolled, came through in opportunities. One of the only successful bases loaded at bats of the entire playoffs happened with the Phillies with that grand slam.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it really instills confidence in the Phillies believers like throughout the playoffs. I think there's some people out there that have the Phillies going to the World Series, and I see no fault in that pick. They did it last year, and that home field advantage is so key. Like it just continued. They didn't skip a beat from last year, and how electric that Citizens Bank crowd was. So yeah, I mean, it really solidified how scary these wild card Phillies are.
Yeah, I mean, this is just they are a different animal, um, in these playoffs. And I'm very excited for Phillies Braves. Yeah, I think we'll should we just get right into the previews because I don't know, I feel like there just really isn't a lot to say about Phillies Marlins other than that was the only series that went exactly as expected for both of us at least.
Yeah, there was there were like zero surprises
Yeah,
from this series for me.
Marlins, congrats on getting here. Hopefully, well, I hope you're back. Um, but this was just not the year.
Yeah, and there's one thing I like that doesn't revolve around the series, but just an idea, and we'll see how much validity this has after the division series. But I think, obviously you want to get that bye if you're in that series, but I think there is something to potentially like that energy of winning a playoff series and bringing that into another playoff series. I think there's a little bit of an advantage to that of carrying that into the next playoff series. And, that's why, it's potentially a little bit of the reason why, three out of four of the teams last year to win the LDS were coming from, the road. So maybe there's a little bit of something to that.
Hmm.
Or no, actually that's incorrect. It was 2 out of 4, but maybe that's something to look out for. But
Hmm.
anyway, uh, yeah, we'll get into previews now. I guess we could start with Orioles Rangers. I guess that's scheduled for 1 on Saturday to start. It's the only one with a schedule determined according to the MLB app. So yeah, Orioles Rangers seems to start at 1. The Orioles and Rangers split the season series 3-3, and the Rangers outscored the Orioles 26-19. What are your thoughts heading into this one?
Yeah, this is a fun one. The Rangers looked really impressed. Have to worry too much about their pitching. I think they only had to use like 3 different bullpen arms between Josh Sborz, Aroldis Chapman, and Jose Leclerc, along with um, Montgomery and Evaldi. I think I think surprisingly they might be two pretty evenly matched teams right now. With the momentum that the Rangers have and just how good the Orioles have been. All they've done this year is defy expectations. Um, and it's their first run at the playoffs. Baltimore is a really, really good place to be in the playoffs as far as atmosphere. So I'm very excited to see what that crowd looks like on Saturday. But regardless, um, it's gonna be interesting. Um, as far as matchups go, I'm assuming it's gonna be like Kyle Bradish versus Dane Dunning or something like that for game one. Because I'm sure they're probably gonna rest Montgomery.
Yeah, as far as if as the Orioles rotation goes, I would think they would go Kyle Bradish game 1, Grayson Rodriguez game 2, or even Grayson Rodriguez game 1. Because yeah, if you look at the overall stats, Grayson Rodriguez had a 4.35 ERA this year, not the best, but
Hmm.
as I mentioned, over his last 12 starts, he's a 2.26 ERA, 2.76 FIP. And I think the Orioles made some adjustments, within the organization that, they sent him down to the minors, and then all of a sudden he got way better at the major league level, and something changed. He seems to be doing a lot better. So that's, when I'm looking at Grayson Rodriguez, I'm not looking at the guy with the 4.35 ERA. That's just not the case. But yeah, it's really interesting, as you mentioned, because we're not huge run differential people, but also the Rangers had the better Pythagorean win-loss this year, which does say a little bit of something. Like Rangers struggled with one-run games. I think Orioles specifically excelled at one-run games. Partially, I think that's somewhat on bullpen, but some of that has been disproven in articles on bullpen affecting the Pythagorean win-loss and all that. But yeah, it's interesting to outlook both starting rotations. Like, you don't know about their depth. With the Rangers, it's because of health. With Orioles, it's because of sort of roster construction. But yeah, you don't really know who's going out there like in the late games.
Yeah, no, it's we'll have to wait to see what they forecast there, but I think the rotations are uh somewhat evenly matched. I'd give the Rangers a slight edge. I'd obviously give the Orioles an edge in bullpen. Offense and defense is you can kind of chalk it up whichever way you want. Both teams have very versatile and diverse offenses. A lot of good bats that you don't want to face. Um, yeah, I'm very excited for this one. This is the Orioles trying to get revenge for the 30-3 game, right?
The Orioles trying to get revenge for the 3-3 game.
The
30-3 game.
30-3 game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is always that.
Yep.
There is
Yeah,
always
Gunnar
that.
Henderson was probably so pissed when that happened.
Oh my God, yeah.
He was about 6 years old.
Yeah, he was just watching and I think he threw something at the TV. It was just pretty aggressive.
Yeah. For some reason he was still up in the 8th inning when it was probably like 11:30 at night minimum.
Yeah, exactly. Are we ready to get into predictions here?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm so scared. I'm so scared to predict now. Like,
yeah. Yep.
Regular season went so bad. This has gone pretty bad.
We're on our 1934 Lefty Grove arc right now.
Yeah, and Babe Ruth once said, "Don't let the fear of striking out let you from playing the game." But I'm not ready to go up at bat right now. I just have no confidence up here. But I figure you get the way you get out of a slump is you go up at bat. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Rangers in 4 here.
Yeah. I get it. I was thinking about saying the same thing. For the purpose of one of us being right, I'm gonna go Orioles in 5 because
Yeah.
I can't let both of us look stupid here. One of us has got to come out looking like they knew what they were talking about. Anyway, Orioles are probably winning 3 now. But I'll go Orioles in 5. I think listen, all the Orioles have done this year is defy expectations. I think even if you get to a game 5 in Baltimore, that's not a place you want to be as a visiting team. Ideally it'll be like a night game. They'll push it back because the rest of the baseball schedule doesn't fit it. But yeah, I will happily go Orioles in 5.
Yeah, I definitely that's if I had to choose another result, it probably would be that result. I think there's something with me with road teams winning. I think it's hard for like a road team to go into another, into the other stadium and win that game 5. So that's why I stuck with 4. I feel like they might split at Camden and then they'll take both in Texas. But I mean, nothing will surprise me in this series. It's pretty even odds also.
Yeah, I'm thinking they split both Baltimore and Texas, and then they come home to Baltimore in game 5, and the Orioles just rally behind that crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'll be surprised at nothing. But yeah, I got Rangers in 4. Daniel's got Orioles in 5, and for the first time, or for the second time probably, one of us will be right in this situation. So Braves-Phillies, it's the one that everyone is going to be paying the most attention to, rightfully so. It's the most exciting one I'm probably most excited for. It's the best wild card team going against the best team in baseball, at least record wise. The To break down, what they did earlier in the season, Braves won the season series 8-5. They outscored the Phillies 74-58, but obviously also the Phillies won in the NLDS last year. It was basically the same scenario as this one, and just player wise, Marcell Ozuna, Matt Olson, and Austin Riley all had 1,000 OPSs or higher in 50+ plate appearances against the Phillies in 2023. What are your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the battle of the heavyweights. This is the matchup that you want at some points. It's the matchup that you definitely most want to, go to a game 5 or at least, look competitive at times. The thing that worries me the most about this series is the Braves rotation. I really don't like the state that they're in right now. Spencer Strider's gonna pitch game 1. Um, and he's obviously a big name. He's a guy that strikes out a lot of batters, doesn't walk a lot of guys, but the Phillies got to him last year, and they're more than capable of getting to him this year because he does have a high ERA. He does give up a lot of hits, and a lot of home runs as well. But after that, Max Fried is questionable. I know that he pitched in the little simulated game um the other day, but who knows if he's ready to go. Charlie Morton is questionable right now. Mike Soroka, unfortunately, has forearm inflammation right now. So their rotation right now, as it stands, is Spencer Strider, Bryce Elder, AJ Smith, Schwarner, and that's kind of it. There's not a lot of names that you really feel confident going out there and giving you a good outing. But we know we know about this Braves offense, right? It's Acuna with his 40-70 season. It's Austin Riley, Matt Olson, and Michael Harris, Sean Murphy, and then even like Eddie Rosario and Orlando Arcia at the end of the lineup there. I mean, they're gonna make you. There are no easy outs here.
Yeah, it's a true zero hole lineup.
Mhm.
Whereas the Phillies are gonna have a couple of holes. I know they had like Christian Pache and Johan Rojas out there as mainly defensive, entities, but we're getting at bats in that lineup in that Marlins series. So yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting. The Phillies obviously have Wheeler and Nola. They'll be pushed back to games 2 and 3 most likely. They might put Taijuan Walker or Christopher Sanchez out there game 1. Sanchez has looked pretty good this year, just at least ERA wise, and obviously you talked all about his pitch movement and all that
Mhm.
a little while back. And then Taijuan Walker, you're not going to have the most confidence in, but he is a pitcher that will get some innings and put your team in maybe a decent enough situation, but who knows? But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this rides on the health of Max Fried. I'm pretty sure Morton is kind of ruled out for this series. Fried was, I think they're more confident in him pitching in this series, like game 2 behind Spencer Strider. We'll see. I mean, I think I kind of like the approach of the Braves, playing those simulated games and taking this new approach because even if it doesn't work, it's a new way to attack the series. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this. I mean, obviously, like the Braves are going to want to win both at home this time around. They don't want to give a game at home because it's a battleground over there at Citizens Bank Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are most of the thoughts on it. It's hard. Like this Phillies team is such a grinder again. Here's what I will say. I think the winner of this series will go to the World Series. In my opinion, I think a lot of people would hold that opinion, and maybe I could go as far to say that the winner of this series wins the World Series. I'm not sure. I think they match up. I think both these teams match up well against
With any
any
team.
American League team.
Mhm.
Any American League team, any National League team. I don't think there's going to be much of a power struggle. Even if the Phillies won just 90 games, I mean that's more than last year, and they did just fine. So yeah, I mean, do we want to get into predictions here?
Yeah, let's do it.
I not for any specific reason. I'm just gonna go Braves in 5.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I'm also gonna go Braves in 5. I think I think I'm gonna go with a hot take here. I think the home team wins every game.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of my brain is going in that direction as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go. I just hope we get a fifth game. I think that's what we need the most.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Um, I mean, at least we're guaranteed some Citizens Bank Park action,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, if the Braves can, Braves, a lot of pressure on the Braves to win this first game because they're likely not facing Wheeler or Nola. Um, and that was the case. Yeah, that was the case last year. They faced Rangers-Suarez game one, had some opportunities with some runners in scoring position, didn't capitalize on it, and eventually lost that game by 1 or 2 runs. I forget how many, but it ended up being close, and they didn't come out on top and ended up losing the series. Where, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them game one, game two. If they can go out and get Wheeler and win that game two, it puts them up in a very good position. But yeah, you never know. You never know with playoff baseball.
Yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. Yeah, it's the battle of the heavyweights.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now we will get into a 2020 AL wildcard rematch with Astros and Twins. Things look a lot different for both teams now. One of the players from the Astros is now on the Twins. One of the main
Yep.
players, obviously, Carlos Correa. Looking at the series, the Twins actually won the season series 4-2 and outscored the Astros 29-25. Not too many other notes regarding this series. It'll be interesting. Starts at Minute Maid, obviously. What are your thoughts on this one?
This is a very tricky series. It's a more tricky series than to predict than you would have thought it would have been like maybe a week ago, definitely preseason. If someone showed you preseason, Astros versus Twins ALDS, I'm thinking Twins got to the ALDS. That's pretty cool. Anyway, Astros in three, but I don't think it's gonna be that easy. The Astros are kind of another team right now that you look at their rotation, and you kind of tilt your head and say, huh? Verlander is gonna be starting game one, I'm sure, and he is the reigning Cy Young Award winner, but he's definitely showed signs of aging this year. Framber Valdez will start game two, and we know who he is. We know that he's great. Christian Javier, he hasn't been as good this year, and I don't love the matchup of him going against a team that thrives off of fly balls, right? Um, I'm not a huge fan of that. And granted, last time he did that in the playoffs, it was the Phillies in the World Series, and that went okay. But he's been a different pitcher this year. And as far as the Twins go, we know what that rotation looked like against the Blue Jays. We know that Joe Ryan's going to be going in game one, right? Like that's their game three starter, but effectively a guy that you could argue is a game one caliber starter. Um, so there's no real holes in that rotation right now. The lineup you definitely need to see more out of. They only scored what 5 runs against the Blue Jays in 2 games, and
Right.
yeah, I mean you need to see more out of them, for sure. But yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubts about it. And yeah, I think you make a good point there that the you look at this series much differently now than you did even 5 days ago or whatever. Like you look at it much differently because now the stigma around the Twins that I definitely had on them is
Hmm.
is pretty much disappeared. Like they've
It's
they've
gone.
they've not only won a playoff game, they've swept the playoff series against what we imagine was a pretty solid opponent there. A much better 6 seed than over in the NL. That's an 89 win team, lots of talent on them. But yeah, I think a lot of people will point out like Astros playoff experience, or maybe use and that's valid, and maybe use last year's postseason success as a marker for their success this year. I think there's also a case where this Astros team is a bit different than last year's Astros team. Just last year's Astros team had a team ERA plus of 132. This year's has a team ERA plus of 107. So that means that the Astros pitching staff is 25% worse than they were last year. And I think there's something to be said in that. They're not, I think, the same dominant Astros that they were last year. Not saying that's going to discount them from playoff success this year, but I think that domination factor of them potentially going 11-2 in these playoffs, it's going to be a lot harder for them, considering regression in some of their players, maybe age of some of their players, maybe regression in certain positions. But they were overall a worse team this year. Still good enough to win the AL West, but it'll be interesting. But and the Twins winning this past week, that makes it a lot more interesting too. But yeah, I mean, I think the Astros still have a ton of advantages here.
Yeah. It's you don't want to get too held up on what they were this regular season, because I mean, like, this is a team that obviously has far and away the most postseason experience out of any team here. They understand, what it means to play here at this level. Even the newer guys like Jose Abreu, like, he's, been there before with the White Sox, against the Astros, so he knows what it's like to play the postseason in Houston. Um, like, and everyone else in the lineup has been there before, right? So it's hard to discount the fact that these guys are all they know the mindset, they know what they're supposed to be thinking out there.
Yeah, and we remember the last time the Astros and Twins met up was the Astros were a sub 500 team. They did not look like good postseason contenders. It looked like this was going to be a year where they fell off, but no, they flipped a switch. They did all the right things, and swept the Twins, and then went on to beat the A's in 4, which we also thought were a superior team, and took the Rays to 7 in the ALCS. So yeah, you can never discount that. This is a team that if they don't win this series, that's the first time since 2016 where they're not making an ALCS. So there's a reason why they've been able to do that. Anything more before we get into predictions?
One thing that I'm very interested to see is, and this has kind of been a saga all season, but where the Astros go at catcher. Do they go with Martin Maldonado? Do they go with Yainer Diaz? Do they pinch hit Yainer Diaz in the late innings if they need a bat? Because one of them is massively superior offensively, but the other one is, a guy that a lot of the pitchers feel more comfortable throwing to. So I'm very curious to see how they go there. I'm curious to see if Jeremy Pena breaks back into his postseason form of last year, because we simply never saw it in the regular season this year. We saw Bregman have a bit of a down year this year. We saw Abreu have a huge down year this year. We saw, Michael Brantley just come back from an injury. I'm very curious to see if these guys all come back like it's nothing.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that will be a factor for me throughout this postseason, however long the Astros stick around here, is like, there is Christian Javier, because last year he in game 4 or in game 3 of the ALCS, he was a major factor, went into the Bronx, basically silenced that stadium with how great he was. And then game 4 of the World Series, he goes out at Citizens Bank Park and basically saves the series for the Astros. Things look so bleak for Houston after that game 3 where they lost 7-0. And he goes out, throws 6 no-hit innings, gets all those pop-ups, gets all those swings and misses, and performs great. Whereas, in these upcoming playoff series, however many they may be, I don't know if we can necessarily trust that, considering how rough things have been going for Christian Javier over the past few months. It's looking a lot different than it did, like that last year, heading into the 2022 playoffs. Javier had given up like 1 run in his previous 32 innings or something crazy like that. Whereas this year, it's way different. So I think that'll be a big difference in the playoffs for the Astros this year.
Yeah. Predictions?
Yeah, for this one, I got I'm taking Astros in 4, and I'll throw in a bonus prediction where if I get it right, I'll look like a genius. If I get it wrong, no one will remember. Jose Altuve, first at bat for the Astros, home run into the Crawford boxes against Joe Ryan.
Yeah, Joe
For some
Ryan is
reason, I'm feeling it.
he's a big fly ball pitcher. It makes sense. I'm also going to go Astros in 4 here. Here's the thing. I really wanted to pick Minnesota, and I know this is such a stupid reason to deviate, but I saw the video that's been going viral of the Twins fans leaving Target Field yesterday doing the "We Want Houston" chant, and they don't know. You can't do it. Like that's it.
Yeah, no,
They
no.
like I know they're inexperienced. They haven't won a playoff series in 21 years. They don't understand. You can't do it. It's never worked. I don't like you could show me like a video of Nationals fans doing it in 2019. I would have been like, no, it's fake. It didn't work.
Yeah,
Same thing with Braves fans in 21.
right. I don't think I don't think Astros fans have ever done that. And also what Astros fans have never done is made a parody rap song about their
Yeah.
team
Yep.
and blown it for them in that respect.
Yep. Unfortunately, someone on the Dodgers did. Some Dodgers fan made one where he dissed the Padres.
Oh, well, uh, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, that didn't work. That did not work.
Yeah, listen, it's such a stupid reason to pick the Astros. It's not the reason I'm picking them, obviously. The Astros are inevitable, but I mean, look, you can't do it. You gotta
Yeah,
know it's 2023. You gotta understand you don't want Houston, and if you say you want Houston, you're gonna see why you don't want Houston.
yeah. You want Houston, you're gonna get Houston, and
Yeah,
Houston's not gonna be what you want it to be. How many games did you say you had them in?
or
Yeah, Astros and 4 from both of us. So now we get into the final series to talk about here, and it is the Dodgers and Diamondbacks, which feels like the biggest trap in the history
yeah,
of predictions. Um, as far as statistical analysis of it, the Dodgers won the season series 8-5 and outscored the Diamondbacks 72-47. Hey, Dodgers regular season success against another AL West or NL West team, that sounds pretty familiar there. As far as individual numbers, Zach Gallen against the Dodgers in 2023 had 2 starts, 10 innings, and a 9.90 ERA and an 8.26 FIP. Christian Walker against the Dodgers this year had a 594 OPS in 51 plate appearances. Corbin Carroll had a 560 OPS in 53 plate appearances. Meanwhile, on the Dodgers side, Freddie Freeman against the Diamondbacks in 2023 had a 1098 OPS and an 8.6% strikeout rate in 58 plate appearances. James Outman had a 1086 OPS in 47 plate appearances against the Diamondbacks this year, and Will Smith had a 999 OPS in 44 plate appearances against the Diamondbacks this year. And by the way, I mean, I'm not trying to create a narrative with those statistics. Like, there were no like significant great Diamondbacks performances against the Dodgers, and no significant Dodgers who were doing poorly against the Diamondbacks. So, and I know that the Diamondbacks also won 5 games in the season series. Wasn't necessarily a blowout by any stretch, but that's the statistical analysis that the significant statistical analysis that we can provide. But what are your thoughts on this one?
yeah. Listen, this is not the first time we've seen a Dodgers and Diamondbacks prediction trap series. Um, there was a trap series in 2017. I fell face first into it. I was so high on the Diamondbacks that year, and the Dodgers swept in 3. So, the trap this time is the opposite way, right? It's come on man, pick the Dodgers. It's so obvious. When the reverse, it was come on man, pick the Diamondbacks, the trendy pick. Uh, I mean, you look at the lineup, right? It's Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, 1, 2, 3. It's Max Muncy, JD Martinez, and then the revival of Jason Hayward, 4, 5, 6, and or yeah, 4, 5, 6, and then it's former Diamondback David Peralta, it's James Outman, Miguel Rojas at shortstop, but then it's also it's guys like Ahmed Rosario, Chris Taylor on the bench, Kike Hernandez on the bench who has experience. And you got a bullpen that's very good, right? I mean, you got a bullpen with Evan Phillips closing it out, with Brusdar Graterol, Caleb Ferguson, Ryan Brazier, Joe Kelly, Alex Vesha, Shelby Miller, another former Diamondback. There's 3 former Diamondbacks on this team, by the way, with Peralta, JD, and Shelby Miller. And then there's that rotation. It doesn't look good at all. It's Kershaw with bad peripherals and like people will say whatever they want about Kershaw's postseason track record, but people forget he does actually pitch very well in the postseason sometimes as well. So that narrative is very hit or miss, right?
Yeah,
Um,
he's the biggest boom bust guy out there.
yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, man. I mean, is it incredibly tough to predict? Absolutely. Uh, it's incredibly tough to not fall into that trap. Anyway, I'm gonna go Dodgers in three.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
I will jump into it and then see what happens. Yeah, I can't, man. Like the Dodgers are another team that feels inevitable, and objectively, on paper, the 2022 Padres are a much better team than the 2023 Diamondbacks. So I don't wanna use that series as a reference.
Yeah, predicting the Dodgers is so hard. Like just no matter what, especially in the playoffs. But I know. I was thinking back to my predictions on the show about the Dodgers, and if you take out the wild card round, I have been wrong about the last 4 Dodgers postseason series.
Nice.
I had the Rays against them in the 2020 World Series. I was wrong about that. I had the Giants against them in the 2021 NLDS. I was wrong about that. I had the Dodgers over Braves in 2021 NLDS or NLCS, excuse me. I was wrong about that. And I had the Dodgers over the Padres last year in the division round, and I was wrong about that. So past four rounds, I have been wrong about them. So yeah, it's hard not to fall into a trap either way. Like this is, I said earlier in a group chat of ours, like I want to abstain from picking the Dodgers because they've just disappointed me too much the past 2 years. But also, like I don't know, this is such an overmatch on almost
Yeah,
all fronts, except for starting pitching. Like Diamondbacks have the advantage there slightly, but um, Dodgers bullpen, by the way, has a 2.21 ERA since the start of August. That is overwhelmingly the best in baseball. So like their bullpen, like I wasn't too high on them in the middle of the season, but they've really turned it around and become one of the best in baseball yet again. No surprises there. Then on offense, I mean, they scored, I think, the second most runs in baseball this year, behind, obviously Betts, Freeman, and then of course Smith, Muncy, Martinez. Martinez being back is a big thing. So yeah, I mean they overmatched the Diamondbacks in almost every single way. And I am going to take the Dodgers as well. Um, I'm gonna take them. I'm gonna take them in 4 games. Why not? Although I know they live in extremes, either extreme disappointment or extreme
yeah.
dominance, but I'll take them in 4. Maybe Zach Gallen defeats them in that game too, but yeah, I'll take Dodgers in 4 just to go a little bit softer there. And
Fair enough.
also I wanted to save it till the end, but I just decided to go with a random theme of picks. I am picking the team who scored more runs than the other for each in the regular season, who scored
That's
more runs
valid.
than the other, because teams who scored more runs than the other in this most recent playoff series, they went 4-0, whereas the team with the lower team ERA went 1-3. The Phillies had the advantage in both. If you're wondering what the numbers are there, so yeah, I'm sticking with the theme of offense winning, and yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Very nice.
Um, all right, so yeah, anything more before we wrap this up?
No, series starts on Saturday, and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, hopefully more fun.
Hopefully, more
Than,
fun than this round.
hopefully more fun than this round. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Giant. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show on Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be hopefully recapping the LDSs and previewing the LCSs. We will see you then.
This conversation is over.